Mike Morgan. I'm the chair of APADC. I want to thank you all for joining us. And for anybody who's not familiar with APA, is just joining us today. We're a nonprofit trade organization for photographers, for commercial photographers, but photographers of all types. And our DC chapter, we put on a ton of events. So I'm really glad you all were able to join us today. We do have a couple upcoming things. We've got a photo assistant workshop this Saturday. We do still have some seats available for that. It's going to be at Yolk Studios, which is like a phenomenal space in Hyattsville, right off of 50 at the entrance to DC. Then we're returned to our focus on wellness, which we're doing quarterly, doing a hike, a spring hike in Rock Creek Park. That's on Sunday, April 28th. That's being hosted by one of our board members, Hanali Lati. And then we've got our coffee break meetup. This is going to be a photo book meetup. So everybody who comes, you're not required to, but everybody's bringing photo books. It's real nice, super casual. We meet in the Kogod courtyard at the National Portrait Gallery. That's going to be Saturday, May 11th. 12 to 2. And yeah, bring photo books that you want to share. Everybody just passes them around. Great conversation. It's a really good time. May 14th, we have happy hour. That's going to be at Midlands in DC on Georgia Avenue. And just want to remind folks who are members and people who aren't members yet, we've got a ton of membership benefits and discounts. If you aren't using these discounts, you should definitely look into it. Take a look, see what you can do. I just bought some stuff from Think Tank and use my discount there. So a ton of different things you should be taking advantage of. Here's some more. And if you are not a member, you're interested in becoming a member, we have a discount code for $20 off any level of membership. That's DC1 for 20. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Lee Morton. We're all familiar with Lee's work. He's got some incredible stuff to share today. And Lee, I'm just going to go ahead and let you take it away. And oh, and I do want to add, if anybody has questions along the way, feel free. You can have your camera on, your microphone on, and if you've got any questions for Lee as he's presenting, feel free to jump in. All right. Thanks, Lee. Take it away.
Sweet. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. And yeah, if anyone does have questions, please jump in. I'm happy to make it conversational, like we're in just a room together. It doesn't have to be a hand raise or anything, so feel free to interrupt. But yeah, grateful to be here, honored to be here. I am a commercial director and photographer, mostly defined as a director who shoots stills, since I am relatively new to the photo world. So my thought was to maybe share some motion projects or some ideas, and then maybe on the photo side I'll have to come to you guys for some ideas and everything. So cool. So let me back up. So I'll go through a quick history. I don't want to spend a lot of time there, just a background, and then the transition that I went through, and then the idea of building a team from my experience of having a full-time staff, and then also working with freelancers, and then hopefully we can hang in the motion side a bit. I have some terminology, some things just to kind of share out, and we can kind of collaborate there. But I'm happy to ask and answer any questions. And on the AI side, this was a last minute add, and I was like, maybe we can talk about that for a second because I've had some interesting use cases of it. So quick history. From a young age, it was graffiti, design, photography, all things, into high school. After that, I convinced my wife not to, divorce me from using our tax return on a DSLR. And so that went into wedding filmmaking and live event filmmaking, and went from my full-time job to weddings. And this was a basement studio that we had in our little townhouse. I was lucky enough to convince some folks to come on and edit and shoot with me. And so we grew. I'm going to go quick here just so we can kind of get to questions and some more stuff later. But wanted to shoot more into the commercial, moodier aesthetic. And so at that point, we launched Moselle. Moselle Films is a production company that I had for about 5 or 6 years. We had an awesome studio here in Baltimore, in Hamden. Had a great staff, a bunch of 20-somethings, just kind of living our dreams, trying to make the best work possible. And it was a blast. I had a lot of fun. I learned a lot. And I think growing that quickly, what I learned is if I wanted to lead or if I wanted to create. And it was definitely a journey for me to figure that out. But as I'll come to mention, having a team just allows for different work you can produce. And so for us, spec projects were huge, and I think passion projects are huge for any creative. And for us, it was us in that conference room, collaborating and brainstorming, which I found as a creative is what keeps the vitality of why we're here going, is to creatively pursue what you're curious about, or be curious what you're creative about. I don't know, both. But we had a lot of fun, and I think that was a big takeaway from having a full-time staff. But we weren't on any big productions yet until this moment, where it was raining outside and we were actually PAing for Under Armour. And I noticed a large part of the crew walked off set and got into their cars. And the producer came up to us and said, "Hey, our G&E team are walking off because of a union disagreement. Can you G&E?" And we had no idea what we were doing. I mean, the 4K lights and the ones with the cranks and all that. I mean, we were completely out of our zone, especially in the rain. But somehow we stepped up, and we managed to get by. And then from that opportunity forward, Under Armour being in our backyard, we were lucky enough to shoot, I would say probably over 100 productions for them, both internal and external. And so this is one of our earlier shoots with them. It was a glow in the dark tracksuit that we did inside. And then we just did a lot of internal work, which led to external work with Tom Brady and Steph Curry and some other athletes traveling around. And so it was quite a joy. It was before they had their internal team there. And so we were just very local. We were accessible. I thought we tried to produce the highest quality content we could, and we had fun doing it. And so that's the short end of Moselle. You can find more on mosellefilms.com. But that was the commercial production studio that I had. And what I learned was, having a full-time team like that, I was really lucky. I mean, it was just beautiful humans that were with me. And I think it was two-part. It was for me, leading that amount of people as young as I was, and trying to figure out how to do that really well, was challenging for me. And then also, I mean, I was lucky enough to have stellar folks, but it was hard to figure out what the next steps for them were, given that they wanted to travel, they wanted to work on different sets, they wanted to work with different people. And so it was sort of like this, if you really love them, let them do that. And then for me, I was like, I don't know if I want to lead, this many people consistently in an office. On set, it's different for me. But so yeah, so I transitioned into a freelance director and photographer, and took a few weeks and took my family out west to Hawaii, and shot a few stills, and sort of just rethought, the career after COVID. The blessing, I guess, there was that, and decided this is what I wanted to do: freelance, direct, and offer stills. It was a request often at Moselle. Brands and agencies were shooting campaigns, or they were shooting video projects, and the last minute they would say, "Can we do stills? Can we do stills?" And I was like, I would love to pour in that. But frankly, I don't know if I was going to mention this or not, but I have so much respect for Sean Hubbard. If you're familiar with him, he's a Baltimore guy, and I never wanted to creep in his world, and so I had to get the guts to talk to him, and I did. And he, of course, he said, pursue your dreams, and he's been so supportive. And so today, yeah, I feel super lucky. I focus on lifestyle campaigns. And I pour a lot into making it feel authentic if it can be, but also lighting has been a big focus, especially since from the video days. So this is a grab that I pulled from a recent mailer that we're going to do soon. And so just thinking about on this one, how we tell the story. This is my first time jumping into a mailer, so I was trying to figure out, how does it tell a story? How does it feel on brand? How does it show variety, but still have a, your fingerprint, right? Your DNA in it, which is so hard, by the way. So kudos to everyone else who's nailing that, because I've learned that it's very hard to do. So yeah. And specifically, I thought it would be fun. A lot of people ask about this image. And so I thought I would talk about it a little bit. This is shot for Hershey Park, and we wanted to get, really great coaster shots. And they suggested, the other guy used to just, kind of turn his hand around and shoot. And I said, okay, we could do that. I don't know how great of an image I could get, but what if some of the best ideas there? Can we mount a camera to the coaster, which we did with two magnets, or excuse me, a magnet down here, if you can see my mouse, and a clamp here. And then this was actually a still from, I was talking to the safety advisor. He wanted me to have a safety strap around this part too. So that's what we did. And then I was like, am I going to be behind them and then just trigger it, or what do I do? And I chose to do the time lapse route. And so just shot for the sky, exposed for that, and shot, a couple hundred images, and got just the right one here that I thought was kind of interesting, with his shoe pushing in, and their facial expression, and the coaster in the background too. Because it was, it's really hard to figure out which moment that you're going to nail. So this was exciting. We had to run it a couple times with no people, just to make sure it held in there, which, if you can imagine, your heart is racing and you feel nauseous. But yeah, the safety straps did it, and it was super fun. It was just a super light A series camera. I forget which one it was, but it was basically only a little bit heavier than a GoPro, one of the GoPros. So I was like, hey guys, from a weight standpoint, these are very similar, and got away with it. So yeah, just a cool little story there. Today, I'm just focusing on different categories, but one would certainly be the industrial part. I love back to that moody image and aesthetic back from the days of video. And so this has been really fun, exploring the strobes and the continuous lighting that's needed, and mixing both and what that's like, which has been a journey. As far as team wise, I mean, Mike mentioned, maybe talking about team, and it's been interesting because, having a full-time staff of 5 and then being on set with folks, and now working with freelancers, it's, the greatest things come from having the best team with you doing it, whether that's in, pre-production in my experience, or on set. And it was interesting. I read this and it just really hit home, the pleasure and results of being a good company of remarkable humans. And that really stuck with me. And I think we do our best work when we're in the good company of great humans. And I would second that with being able to do what you love with the people that you love is like, that's the ultimate success, I think, professionally. And so, noticing for me that I will happily pay someone a little bit extra or out of my profit fee just to travel them in, because from my experience, when you have that team that you're really comfortable with, um, it across the board, all spectrums, the client experience, your comfortability, and then most importantly, your ability to solve problems and monkey wrenches on set, because you have trusted lieutenants. And so for me, that's the space I like to be in, because we all get the monkey wrenches on set. And so I think having the ability to be vulnerable with a close-knit team, and someone who's willing to go into battle with you, right, and face these challenges head on, and do it with grace and love is sort of the sweet spot. I would say, if anyone's considering and they're growing their shop, having had employees, I experience as a different game, where we have to think about the team and not just like creating for the sake of it and going out. Obviously there's payroll, but there's also, everyone being on the same page, but still letting different voices be heard, which is super important. And no one, in my experience, in the creative world, wants to feel like it's a 9 to 5. And so, challenging ourselves to figure out how there's a fair sake of variety in the workplace, and being able for them to still freelance and do other things while still coming to the shop. And that their voice matters, right? And that if the company is profitable and it's growing, how are they incentivized to? And so, yeah, that was just sort of some of my things that I've noticed. But if there's any tips to be had, I mean, for me, it's been the finding folks that you work closest with, and most comfortable with on set, even if that means traveling them in. So I've done that in the past. This was a larger set that we were lucky enough to get on for Care First a couple years ago. And it was a reminder that there are so many different departments. And so just making sure, from my experience, that those department heads are, you have a good relationship with them. Art, G&E, casting, locations, et cetera, that everyone understands the vision and that everyone has a permission to stand up and share their thoughts too. We've had a lot of ideas come from different departments that, may not be their place, but they had ideas. And so that's the other thing as far as interdepartmental brainstorming, if you will. I think there, shout out to Andy Schwartz, if anyone's familiar with him. He's a great Steadicam operator. But if, one thing that I learned too is that people don't really want to be told what to do. They just want to, what's it look like when it's done? And then they'll find a way to get there. That was also told to me when I was introduced to a gaffer for the first time and understanding that role. I don't have to tell him, what fixture and what intensity and what, whatever. He just wants to know what's the quality of light and how do you want to make it feel? And he'll get there. And I feel like that is so true with ACs and art departments and all the different departments, that's sort of the joy for them in figuring out how to solve problems. But you can just provide the vision and what is it going to look like at the end, and then allowing a team to kind of get there. I would say being freelance now, the remote factor has been interesting and opening up so many different relationships and partnerships with editors, producers, colorists, sound designers, retouchers. I think we can expand our Rolodex beyond what's local, knowing that a few years ago, the world changed. And so I've been finding a lot of joy in that, trying to update my workflow with, certain partners and, post-production folks that are remote. And, we have to figure out the time zone part of it, but it's been good. So this is an example of using a tool called Loom. It's a great video capture tool and with Frame.io to kind of talk through notes. And so we have an editor in Chicago and an editor in LA, and just being able to quickly provide them notes and thoughts as if they were local has been really helpful. And I found Loom to be helpful too. And I think the editors appreciate, a little bit more than just time code notes, because sometimes your inflection, right, and the nonverbal of how you describe something helps a lot, especially in video. So talking about motion specifically, it could be sound design, it could be pace, it could be how a moment feels. In my experience, has been advantageous with a screen capture and a webcam of explaining those moments. So. Also Notion. This is a good example of just having crew. This is a little bit older, but just having your Rolodex is so important. Using a tool called Notion, if anyone's familiar with it. But this is how I do my pipeline for work. So there's a couple that are hidden there, but leads into pre-production, production, and post-production. I just wanted to shout out Notion because I love the platform and it's really helpful for organizing all things. It could be client contacts, could be new ideas, could be mood boards, it could be actual projects like this, equipment lists, etc. So if anyone wants to jump in there, it's also personal too. So I use it for personal projects. Just to be able to organize thoughts, because I don't know if anyone feels like me, but as a creative, my mind is all over the place and I have so many ideas. So I need like paper and pen. I need my notebook and everything just to kind of record and organize, because it can get scattered pretty quick. But yeah, so that's Notion. And then again, questions anytime if anyone has anything. But Freeform is another one that I use. And so if anyone's familiar, it's native to the Mac platform. But this has been really helpful for organizing productions as a visual creative way where you can kind of zoom in, organize things, zoom out. I do screenshots, boom, paste, links, etc. And it is the benefit of being native in the Mac platform is it connects to your iPad, your iPhone, and you can see if someone's making updates to it. And so if I were to zoom out of this, you would see there's like 20 different projects that's like this. And so this is a good example of a power production shoot that we did. The clients up in Philly, but they had references here. We had our shot list, we had our location. You can have casting, you can have your, props, you can have wardrobe, kind of visually everything here that's quickly movable, which has been helpful for me. So. How we doing? Okay, flying through. All right. So on the motion side, I thought it'd be fun to kind of just go through a couple terminologies, terms, phrases. And if anyone knows them, shout them out. Cool. If not, happy to explain. The motion world that I found, that I know is sort of like it is so different than photography. Photography being more of a DP of nailing the lens and the lighting. With on the motion side, yes, there's cinematography, but then there's also post production. There's editorial and sound design and a colorist. And how does a colorist do it this way? And what about final conforming? What does that mean? And then revisions with the client. How do we manage expectations and et cetera? So it's a little bit of a different world. But first one, establishing shot. That's a little bit of a giveaway. But that's just going to be more in the world of establishing where we are. And so I feel like sometimes as photographers, we get right to the action, but it's important in cinematography and motion picture to give the audience where we are, a sense of place. And before we get to cutaway, the other thing too is that with motion, and this is one thing that I found that it's tricky for photographers is with motion, it's a little bit of mystery of where the journey is going, and you lead them with that in your editorial. So you don't give it away right at bat. And sometimes that's against the odds with agencies and brands because they want to have their logo in, within 7 seconds. But we've proven that. We've done a couple projects where the logo hasn't been in for a while because it's caught the interest of the viewer and they've been following along. And building that mystery is just super important with motion picture. So cutaway. That would be, resting and giving the viewer a second to understand what just happened, and you see something else, in town or in the house. You see the clock moving, just some street signs, just to give your brain a rest. Anyone know the difference between A roll and B roll? So,
Sorry, go ahead, Lee.
no, do it, Good. I need a drink.
Yeah, well, I consider A roll interview, and then B roll is the footage behind the interview or behind the voiceover.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it. So the A roll is going to be whatever the audio is. Could be an interview, could be a voiceover, tech, whatever it is. And then what's the supporting footage on top? And then in my experience, I think it was an older mechanism that they used where it was like that. But yeah, that's the difference. And sometimes in the motion world, we'll do a CSA. And so pre-pro, you're going to, on the left, have what we're going to say, and then what are we going to see? And so if you think of an edit, you're like, okay, about us, and then, okay, then show the location, show our team. Well, what do we do? Oh, we make, hamburgers, and this is our kitchen, and this is our ingredients, and this is our tools. And then, okay, what else? Well, there's our customer, right? So you show that. Well, what are we saying when we show that? And so it's a CSA document that we use in motion, just to give the client an idea of what to expect, which client expectations are everything. I think everyone knows here. So on the motion side, it's even more tricky because it's a different kind of animal. Sync and time code. That's just going to be with sound folks understanding on set. Some cameras will sync everything up via time code, which is a numeric code that different cameras have, and it's usually at a cinema level with the cameras. And then anamorphic, if anyone's familiar with that. Shooting with that, it's a bit wider. It's going to give a more of a cinematic view. But in today's age, it gets hard because we were shooting social for everything, right? So getting a vertical frame in these is really hard. So we don't get much anamorphic as much because of the social needs. So dailies, I'll throw that one back out there. Anyone for dailies?
That's sort of like highlights of the day's edits, basically,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, and movies, it's really common. But if you're on long shoots, if you're on several days, that evening, the editor or the DIT would put together, just kind of the best shots from each scene and everything, so that the next morning you guys can review it and go over it and see how it's going, so that it could change the decisions for the next day. Continue framing that way, or oh, remember that shot with John? Let's do that for this, and then we can have a match cut. Or hey, the client wasn't feeling that. We're kind of drifting. Let's get back to this. So it's a good tool for that. A common phrase is, shooting for the edit. Sometimes we get caught up in the visuals, shooting just the visuals, but realizing the pace of the edit. So having the music and what's called an animatic helps to know how the pacing of it. Are we really going to be on that shot for that long? Happens all the time. It's very, especially when you shoot 30s or 15s. If you were to do an animatic of a 15 and you realize you're only on the shot for 2 seconds, 2 seconds, 2 seconds, right? And then you get on set, having that pace in mind is just really important, in my experience, because the client can get caught up in something, and there's always the thing in the back, the red, box, and they're like, but that red box in the back, and you're like, but look, let's just play it for 2 seconds. Would you realize it? So that's kind of a thing that I've learned, or realizing. Another term that I learned, on the video side versus photo, would be blocking, which is just the coordination between all the different characters and where they're going in the scene. Walking this way, going this way, basically getting down our extras, where our extras, our background, where are they going to be at what time. Final conform, anyone know that one?
So if it's so that's for color grading. If it's in a different uh program, you need to, if it was edited in a different program, you have to conform from DaVinci, you have to conform it before it goes into DaVinci.
Or your other editor. Yeah, that's one round trip workflow. In my experience, the final conform has been the one day booked for the editor to conform it to the deliverables that they have. And so it could be, we have we've gotten to write some weird stuff. A Times Square is a good example, right? Times Square has a, 2 foot by 30 foot this way, but then you also need to put it on social, and you need to put it on this cooler in the grocery store, and then it also goes on this bus stop, and it's a square. And so it would be that day going through all the different deliverables, that it needs to edit to. And there's bit rate, right, and file types, and no, they need mono channel versus stereo channel. I'm still learning it. But certain advertisers have very specific needs, with the deliverables at the end. And then proxies, you probably may know what that is. I might even spelled it wrong. Forgive me if I've spelled anything wrong. But yeah, sometimes you're shooting red 4K or 8K or whatever, and that's just going to give you exports of really H.264 small files to edit off of, because shooting on the raw is pretty tricky. Cool. Again, jump in, anyone. But AI. So this has been a good example, of using it to create a new thing that you really can't find the references for. So, doing treatments in commercial production and video. How do you want something to feel? This was an example of a project I just pitched for a resort. They were doing a color theme, and the top image, I think we all know, blue hour walking on the beach, fine, that's easy reference. But finding someone doing a cold plunge with a green, plant-based, art-driven, setting was like super hard to find. African-American, mixed female. So AI helped with that, right? And then a paint party with a bunch of your girlfriends, and you want to have some of the apparel be orange, and it wants to feel in the moment, right? I mean, these are just super specific references, where it helps. And so in the theme of that, we went into the purple, which is meant to feel like a tiki outdoor party at a resort, where people are still classy but having fun. But yeah, it looks like the girl on the left, her hair might be on fire. I don't know. You never know what you get out of AI, so it's always fun. But I just think it's been an interesting tool. I know everyone has their fears on it, and their curiosities, and mine is, I think it's really fun. Specifically, this would be Midjourney, if you're familiar with that, and there's obviously a bunch of other tools. But I think it's a great tool to get inspired with, to just push ideas forward. One project we had was for Luray Caverns, if you're familiar with that. It's down in Shenandoah Valley, and they wanted to shoot a little bit more of a commercial look for the caverns, and they didn't have any reference images. And I searched the internet, the caverns all over the world, what kind of commercial photography, and there wasn't any. And so using AI to generate some of those images to give them an idea of how it could look and feel, just to get a sense of where they were, right? And because how are we going to light it? Is it really backlit? Is it front lit? Is it toppy? Is it moody? What's your comfort level on the mood, right? Because obviously that could change immensely. And so it was interesting, the images came out. Sorry, my top one's a little bit low res, but they came out kind of close, which was interesting, and helpful for everyone involved, just to kind of see, what it could look like, and on set, how it actually looks. So
I love the idea of using them as for reference, and putting together mood boards and things like that. Have clients talked to you at all about potentially trying to use AI for final art at all, or is that just not a conversation that commercial clients seem to be having with you just yet?
Not yet for me. There's been one, it happened for the first time. It was almost like a historical moment where, for, like in the conversation, but it was, yeah, it was a video project and we were talking about something and they were like, well, maybe we could just Sora it and put it in. And they use Sora as like a, adjective or a verb, which was really interesting. And, I was like, holy cow, like this might be the first time where, they're right, where you could just generate a video clip and put it in a simple B-roll. But actually, no, I haven't used it yet. So, and that was actually the end. So I can, you can stop sharing. Is that okay?
Oh yeah, that's great. Yeah, we can go back to
Okay,
the
cool.
full screen here. Yeah, I did have a couple questions early on. I know you were on a roll, so I didn't want to
No,
jump in,
sorry.
but
Yeah, I didn't I just going. Yeah.
that's okay. No, that was great. I'd like to just kind of take it back to the beginning. I did have a question because I know a lot of people their entree into photography or film is through weddings, and and there's a huge divide between the wedding and retail world and the commercial world. So can you talk a little bit about how you approach that, how you transition successfully from weddings into commercial, and when you had just a portfolio of wedding work, how did you start generating commercial clients and commercial jobs?
Yeah, it's a great question. And for me specifically, I remember shooting a wedding show where it was like they picked four wedding, what do they call them? Designers or forget the term, but they each interpreted this theme differently. And so we did a video capture of that and they wanted to put it online. And so specifically for me, it was finding ways that were somewhat wedding, but also a little bit different, to go shoot that. And then we did that, edited it, and they loved the music, they loved the pace, and they shared it out. And so it was kind of wedding, but it was kind of corporate. And I think at that point, I remember getting a couple inquiries of like, oh, do you do interviews? Do you know how to shoot this? And so it was that moment for that. But I was always passionate about differentiating the brands. And so right after that was ClickSpark that did weddings. I knew in my heart it was, that brand was not going to get great corporate work because they're two different audiences. One is a 27-year-old, right, female, and then the other could be a 6-year-old marketing director or agency folk. And so it had to be a different brand. And so for me, it was creating two different brands. And then we just started shooting. I remember like night and day. We shot simple things. So we went to a florist, right? That's a wedding person, and then did an interview and shot B-roll and put it to a 30-second thing, right? For free. Cool, shipped it. Then we went to a glass blowing facility. I'm like, glass blowing is cool. Let's shoot that. They'll get a free film out of it. Look, we can do this. Shot that. And so those couple corporate films and the wedding film was our portfolio for the corporate brand, when we transitioned to that space. And then I still remember after that, we wanted to shoot more, to us, cool stuff. So we're like, what else can we shoot that's cool? So back when we had the team, we went out and just shot so many things for free. We found a horse farm, right? And just shot like horses at dusk. And then we went to a guy who was like a pro golfer. We're like, let's shoot cool golf stuff. Knowing that Under Armour was close, we had to have some sports stuff. But yeah, and then we just kind of shot thing after thing after thing. And then we had a little bit of a portfolio or a little bit of a reel that was more than just weddings. And that's how we started. And then just to quickly note, it's interesting. When then we were in the rain shooting for Under Armour or PAing, they asked us to come in. You ever want to come in? I'm like, sure. And so we went in with that reel that I just mentioned. And there was like 8 Under Armour people. And they were like, okay, which one of these are paid projects? And I was like, well, it's all passion. I had to sort of defend it in a way where it was like, none of this is paid, and so that was literally where we were. We were in front of Under Armour with like no paid commercial production experience. But we had the wherewithal, I guess, the grit and the determination to try to shoot many other different things the best we could and put it together. So
Wow, that's pretty awesome. I did another thing. I know you showed the mailer that you're sending out, and then it struck me when you said that this was the first mailer that you'd put together. to send out. So I don't know, can you talk a little bit about your marketing and what had you done previously? How did you go about creating a list of potential clients and who to reach out to? And what made you decide to do a mailer now versus what you've been doing?
Sure. So I have to give all the credit to Stacy at Philly Reps. She was a great resource and person to help me out with that and convinced me to do it. Before that, I did a larger book to sort of make I wanted to sort of make my name known in the photo world. So I decided to make a small booklet and chose that first, which is more like an adventure book that I used. And then now it's the mailer. But I would say my list has been just really organic and simple of like the folks that I've worked with, the folks that have reached out and inquired. We may not have worked together or not, but I had just took their email address and added them onto my list. And then if I, was curious and poked around and found agencies in local regions that made sense that I thought would be good fits, I'd add them on there. But yeah, it's been pretty organic. It's still small, but it's just folks that I've worked with. And then we had some help with Philly Reps, which were great. But yeah, the print stuff is new to me. I think it's fun. I'm still curious what the world thinks about print. I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. Yeah, let me just grab this book really quick. This was the first thing that I did was this was like volume 1, and I have volume 3 too. But just meant to be like outdoors. I wanted to be known for outdoors. So this was a way to, tell some stories, talk about the transition from, having a production company to freelance, and just some stories in there.
Very cool. I'm curious, who'd you use for printing the book?
We did Smart Press, if that sounds familiar.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
It's Smart
Heard
Press.
of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I'm the motion world. I feel like I have a little bit of understanding, but the stills and print is new to me. And so I'm kind of learning it as I go.
Excellent. All right. And then did anybody have any questions they want to ask you? The floor is open if anybody wanted to jump in. So
I have a question about working with other members of your team and having them on payroll. Like, how does that come about? Are you like, okay, well, now we're earning enough that I think I could hire someone on, or do they start out as like contractors?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I don't know. It was like figure it out. But Eli, it was literally, I was at my house and then I was shooting weddings, and the weddings were coming in a good bit. And I needed help shooting them and editing them. So I brought in someone and I was like, I can consistently pay you this. And it was like contractor based. And then it was consistent enough where weddings were so predictable at the time, shooting 40 a year, that I knew I could pay someone to help me come shoot them and edit them and then systematize that, which was really helpful. And then that was growing. And then so we had the budget to hire someone else. And it was contract based. It was like, do this, edit for this, do this for this. And however long it takes you, it's up to you. And that's how we incentivized them to get it done. And so, yeah, it was contractor based until it was enough to go salary. And then so this is what's interesting, from the wedding space to the commercial space, we were in two different sectors, sort of had double work, right? Because we were still shooting weddings and we were shooting corporate films. So there were sort of two businesses there that were funding the money for one group of people. And so I was able to get through like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
very interesting. That's a great question, Eli. Okay. Well, I don't, I know we've gone a little over our 30 minutes now. Did anybody else have any questions for Lee? Okay.
I have another one.
Yeah.
So Lee, really like your work. You said you wanted to come from a moodier aesthetic. What was your influence for that?
That's a good question. Yeah. We were inspired by a brand called Variable, which was a production company probably, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago. And collect me and the team at the time, but me personally was just really drawn to that aesthetic. Like if we were to watch anything, like, you have your people on Vimeo who you follow. And it was just those pieces that we were really drawn to. And I don't know why. I think it's more like, just your creative curiosity. But then, it's interesting because I'm glad you brought it up, because if you're a production company, you need to serve different clients that have different aesthetics. And so that was cool for us. And maybe some people would like that. But if you want to work for, right, a McCormick, or a happier poppy brand, right, that's being more colorful, we had to shift that. And so I think we had our own personal aesthetic that we were just naturally drawn to. I don't know why, but then learned that the sort of the story or the client, we had to adjust, our aesthetic and lighting for them. So thanks everyone for the notes that are coming in the chat.
I was
And
curious.
go ahead.
Sorry. I was curious what your research process kind of looked like when you were going into a project like that for the clients.
Sure. For which one?
For like any client, really, like, is there a specific process you go through when doing your research?
Yeah, that's a good question. Specifically, yeah, for this one that I'm doing now with Hyatt, it was Hyatt Breathless. And I'm a visual person, so leaning into Frame Set, I think it's called, which is a tool, Frame Set, which is really helpful researching it that way. Another one is, these are just websites, but sav.ee, which is really nice. For me, it's visual research. It's kind of pulling in, what's out there, what's different, what's on trend, what's that brand about, what am I interested in that I think I could give value, in. And then another interesting tool is kive.ai, kive.ai, which will extract any video that you put in there into frames, which is really helpful. And then kind of find ideas into there, right? And if anyone's familiar with eye candy, that's another one, just to get inspiration and ideas with, of like, oh, what if we pushed in this way or did that way? And so I think for me, yeah, me personally, it's more about the visual research of trying to acquire as many visuals that fit the story, and then to see if the client's down for it. Always throwing out a couple of wild cards to see if it sticks. Most of the time it doesn't, but just to say, like, what if we try to shoot it that way? Like, are you game? So is that what you meant?
Oh, pretty much. Thank you.
Sure.
Great question. Okay. All right. And anyone else? Okay. All right. Well, Lee, thank you so much for this incredibly informative presentation and for sharing everything that you did and for being here with us today. And thanks everybody for joining us. Yeah, fantastic work and really awesome to hear how it all came about and yeah, how you've built this. So, all right. Well, thank you everybody. Thanks for joining us. And yeah, hope to see you all at one of our upcoming events.
Thanks,
Okay.
everyone. Appreciate it.
Okay.